Hello and welcome to episode 54 of the She.Must.Knit podcast. My name is Erin and thank you so much for spending some of your time with me today. I hope you guys had a great week. I had an okay week. It could have been better. Last week, right after I recorded, actually that day I was kind of feeling a little bit off, but I wasn't sure if it was, is it going to turn into anything or not. Avery had brought home one of her little school bugs, and yeah, Saturday morning I was like, yep, I got it. So all last week I was sick. Yesterday was the first day that I felt like normal, so today I still feel a little stuffy, but I feel pretty much back to normal. But as I've mentioned before, I have my show season starting in 2 weeks. In 2 weeks, on the 27th, I am going to be at the Toronto Knitters Frolic. And then I have the Sunshine Faberfest right after that. And then I have a trunk show at the Knitting Basket right after that. So this is my 2-week crunch time. Like, I need to get a lot done. And I will admit that it was really, really hard to be productive this week. I had a lot of sewing to do. And there was just some days where I just, I didn't want to do anything, but I had to. And so I did get things done. I do feel like I'm at a good place for my inventory and stuff, but I feel like my knitting might have suffered a little bit. And even if I wasn't sick, I think it would have suffered a little bit too, because normally I knit in the afternoons before Avery gets home, and right now with show prep, I'm pretty much working all the way through, and sometimes it'll be the evening that I get a little bit of knitting done. I still feel like I have some good progress on the projects that I've been sharing with you, but just not as much as I think I would have if I wasn't trying to get all this work done. So what do I have to share with you today? I have, again, progress on the 3 projects that I've been sharing with you. I don't have any new projects and I don't have any finished objects, but I do feel like those should be coming next week. And then this is a chat week. So last week in the comments, lovely Shirley, who is a viewer, hi Shirley, she asked about some of the little critters that are behind me. So I thought because this was a chat week, it might be fun to just go over some of the little objects and little things behind me and their stories and why they're there. And some of them, if you've been a long time viewer, you will have remembered that I have made in the past year, but some of them I have not made. Some of them I've made previously. So I just thought it might be a fun little topic to cover. And then the only other thing I want to mention before I get started into my projects is that I realized over this past week that I have been uploading and creating videos for YouTube for a year now. It has officially been 1 year. I think I uploaded last year on April 1st was my first video. And yeah, I can't believe it's been a year. So if you guys have been watching, if any of you have been watching right from the beginning, thank you so much. If you haven't and you're a new viewer, thank you for being here as well. I would love to know if you've been watching from the beginning or if you watched later or how you found my videos. That would be lovely. And then also, I would just love to know any feedback you have. So it's been a year. What do you like seeing? Is there anything that you would like to see more of? What have you enjoyed that I have put out into the YouTube world so that I know what to do more of? So that is it for that. I'm going to take a quick sip of my very cold coffee. It is after dinner. It's after 6 o'clock now. I couldn't record earlier today because, as boring as it sounds, I had a dentist appointment, and yeah, I felt like recording with a half frozen mouth. While that may have been very entertaining, I don't think it would have gone very well. So I decided to wait, and it is now after 6 o'clock. And actually, Avery's school has a family skate night right now. So she and Dennis are off having fun at that. I have a little time to myself, so I thought this would be the perfect time to record. So back to why I am drinking cold coffee. I made this in the afternoon. I didn't get to it because I've had a lot of work to do today, and so I'm going to finish it now. Let me know. Are you someone who will just drink your coffee cold? Because I will. I've gotten used to it. I don't care. So that's what I have. Nice cold coffee. And then the next thing I think I'm going to get into is the progress on my Scott base socks. These are so close to being done. I feel like if I didn't have to do so much sewing this week, these would have been done for sure. So what I've showed you last week, this is the first sock of the pair. So again, this is the Scott base pattern. I am making these for my brother, and I picked this pattern because it is one that I've had in my library for a long, long time, and that is one of my goals on my bingo card this year. So this is the first sock, and it is completely finished. However, as I've mentioned, as I was knitting down the foot of the sock, I realized that I was not going to have enough yarn for the second sock if I continued and knit it to be the exact same way as this sock. So I had to make some adjustments. So the first adjustment I made is I did a contrast toe in some Peyton's Croy yarn. And I knit the toe together with the reinforcement thread that came with this yarn. That's why I decided to make these socks for my brother, because he wears out his toes, and I thought this would be the perfect application for one of these yarns that came with the reinforcement thread. So I finished this one, and then I started the second one, and I started it with the contrast cuff because I knew I was going to have to make this yarn just stretch a little bit further. So if you match up the heel, where the heel increases start, so you can see the little triangular shape starting right there, you can see that this cuff is going to be significantly shorter than this one, and also it is going to be, it's going to have the contrast. So basically what I'm going to do is I'm finishing the second sock, and then I'm going to insert my needles right about there, cut off this top part, and then knit up with the contrast cuff. And if I remember, I will try and get a little video clip of me doing that just so you can see how I ended up doing it, but that is the plan. And then going down the foot now, I am so close. So this is how far I have left to go before I do the contrast toe on the second sock. This is what I have left of the ball. I don't know if this is going to be enough. It might be like just to go that far, about that far. I've been working on this since Avery got home from school because I was like, oh, there's so little left of this. Let's try and get this done before I record so I don't have this thing flapping around while I'm trying to talk about this project. And so I was working on it, and it is just, it's like the never-ending, almost done sock yarn. Anyway, so I don't know. It very well may make it all the way down to the toe. It may not, but if that's the case, then after I cut off this top part, I will just use some of that yarn to finish this off. So either way, I know I will have enough yarn to finish the socks, and they will be a matching pair. Now, the only other thing is that these have ended up to be slightly different, and it is completely my own fault. So I think last week I mentioned that I was doing, so I am doing a different heel in these socks than is called for in the Scott base pattern. The Scott base pattern uses a heel, flap, and gusset. And I have really been liking this structure where you kind of increase in a triangular shape and then do some turns and decreases to shape the rest of the foot. And so I am using the pattern or the heel that was in the Jangles pattern that I used back in February. And I made a comment last week how I'm finding that heel to be a very intuitive pattern. So it's very easy for me to do this part of the heel without referring to the pattern. And I thought, okay, I'm probably going to have to just double check for the next part, but I do remember it being very easy as well. Well, this past weekend I was at my mom's and I brought these socks and I was knitting away at them, and I got past the point where you increase to a certain amount of stitches and you start doing, you knit to the middle and start working your way back out and decreasing. And I did that, and then I just kept going because I was just like, oh, well, obviously you just do this until you get back to the number, half of the number that you increase to, so that you have the same number as you started with going around the circumference of the foot, right? Right, it makes sense. So that's what I did. And then I looked at the other sock and I realized, no, that's not what you do. There was something else in there too that I obviously totally missed, and I should have checked the pattern. But I think it'll be okay. So I don't know if you can tell. So at the top of the heel here is where you knit to the middle and then start working your way back out. And then up to about, see, this is the first one. So up to about here is where you're knitting back and forth and doing the slip and turn and knit two together, purl two together, blah, blah, blah. So you do that to about there. On the second sock, I just kept doing that all the way until I got to the original number. Whereas on this one, you can see all of a sudden the decreases start going down here. So they don't go all the way over to the pattern like this one does, but they start going down. And I was like, oh, darn it, am I going to have to rip all this work out and redo it? But I tried them on, and they do feel very similar on the feet. So I think it's more of like they look different, but technically they're both, in both ways, there was decreases happening on every other row. It's just those decreases were happening in different places. So when I did this one, not referring to the pattern, I kept the decreases working from the center of the heel outwards to the outside, and in the proper pattern, you did that to a certain point, and then those decreases moved to closer to the outside and just stayed there, which is why it goes straight down there. So, like I said, I have tried them on. They feel very similar on the foot. I don't know if my brother will actually notice if there's any difference. I will try them on again as I get closer to the toe to make sure that the length wasn't affected at all, but I think it will be okay. But that is just a lesson to me that even if I think I know what I'm doing, that I should just check that pattern anyway, because you never know. You never know. So yeah, that's the progress on my Scott-based socks, and I really do anticipate those being finished for next week. The next project that I have to share with you is my April Desert Vista Dyeworks socks, and I have them on a little form as well because I want to show you the heel. The heel's a little bit different. It's the same kind of structure, but there's some different stitches, so it looks different, and I wanted to show it on a more three-dimensional form. So last week, when I shared these with you, I was right about here, so I was just working down the ribbing of the sock, and this is another pattern that I pulled from my library that I purchased several years ago that I just want to make use of. It's one of those things that I'm just trying to do this year, is things that I've already spent money on, let's just use, both in knitting, in yarn, in life, in the house. I've mentioned this before, I'm just trying to use what I have, and it's been going very well. I think I'm going to have on another episode coming up in another chat week, another little update about how my kind of like my low-buy, my lifestyle low-buy and using what we have is been going. But I want to use patterns that I have. So this pattern is Rib is the New Vanilla, and I liked it because it's using that same kind of triangular shaping heel that I've been doing over the last few months that I've really liked, and it just had like a different little spin to it. So this is how far I've gotten, and there you can see the heel. So it's the same form where you're just increasing out to a certain point, and then you start doing the little turn and going back and forth and decreasing to where you get to the number that you need for the foot, and then you just keep going. The one thing I will mention, I forgot to say this last week, was that this pattern was written when you start up at the leg here. There is a 1x1 ribbed cuff that you do for about an inch before you go into the 3x1 rib, and I personally just didn't like how that looked going from one type of rib to another type of rib. If I'm going to do a ribbed leg, I like it to be the same all the way through. So all I did was, instead of doing the 1x1, I went right into the 3x1 and just did that for the full length that I wanted the leg to be before I started increasing for the heel. Now, I don't know how I feel about this pattern, and I think it comes down to that there are just some designers out there, and the way that they write their patterns, it's just not the way that your brain kind of processes patterns. And I've only come across maybe one or two other designers like this, where while I can work through their patterns and I can get to that final result, it's just their knitting language, so how they write their patterns, how they explain things, is not the way that my brain would naturally do those same things. And I'm finding the same thing with this designer. Last year, while I was doing the Desert Vista Dyeworks Challenge, I remember trying another one of her patterns that I had in my library, which was, I think, Vanilla Reversed. So it's a very similar look to this, except it was a toe-up pattern, because last year I was still really loving toe-up socks. And I remember getting to the heel, and I just could not understand for the life of me what she was trying to explain to do. You had to move stitches around. There was something that you had to do to get set up. It just didn't make sense to me. And because I was in a time crunch with the monthly socks, I just put that pattern aside and just I just did my regular vanilla sock for that month. So going back to another one of her patterns, the same thing happened when I got down to this heel shaping here. Like, looking at the pattern, she has a very clear picture of what the heel looks like in her pattern, and looking at that, I was like, okay, this is how I would do it, right? This is, my brain automatically went, okay, you know, it's just, it's garter, you can see, it's like garter stitches in between the rib with increases happening to shape the heel. But when I looked at how she explained it, it was like an 8-row repeat, and there was make one knits and there was make one purls, and I'm like, why are there make one purls? Like, why can't it just be like it? I had to read it over 2 to 3 times before I just decided to do it the way that it made sense to me. And I was able to do it in a way that was basically a 2-row repeat with no make one purls. It was just make one knits, and as far as I can tell, it gives basically the same effect. And so once I got started on that, it was fine. I was just able to do that 2-row repeat until I got to the amount of stitches that I needed to have. The amount of stitches that I got completely matched up with the number of stitches in the pattern, so I was able to follow the steps for the next part. And now I'm back to where I've joined back in the round, and I'm working my way down the foot. So it's all good, you know, it's still basically the same pattern. It's just, I think this designer is not a designer that my brain meshes well with. So going forward, I probably won't try other patterns of hers, even though she has some really, really pretty patterns. So this is where I am so far with my first sock. I will mention with the heel, because sometimes I do different things to make sure that the stripes stay continuous. For this one, I did end up working all the way through the heel decreases, and then when I got to where you joined in the round again, I did cut the yarn and pull out, I think, 2 stripes worth to get back to this light blue stripe, so that it would continue in the same pattern. So yeah, that is all I have done for this first sock. I do feel like it shouldn't take me very long to finish this sock. I am knitting these for my mom. I mentioned last week how she asked if I could make her a pair of socks, and I said gladly yes. She watched the episode last week, and she does approve of these colors. This is the colorway Freud's Dream, again from Desert Vista Dye Works. But she has really tiny feet. She has size 5 feet. And because she's going to be wearing these over other socks, I am going to knit them to a size 7. And this foot shape is about a size 7. So if you think about, you know, if I was to start the toe shaping around there, I only have about that much more knitting to do before I can start the toe decreases. So I really don't have a lot more to do to finish this first sock. I really think over this weekend I should be able to finish the Scott Base socks and get this sock finished and get my second sock started. So that would be good. I really do think that I should have no problem, even with all the extra workload that I have right now. I should be able to get these April socks done, and then it should be smooth sailing for the rest of the months, because this really is my most stressful month. I'm really trying to bump up my inventory a lot before the frolic, so that that will kind of carry me through the next couple of shows I have. Like, I will have to still make stuff to kind of replenish, but it shouldn't be like the crazy sewing frenzy that it is right now. So I feel pretty confident that I will get those done this month. So the only thing I will add about both of those pairs of socks, because I don't think I've mentioned this in a while and I may have new viewers, is that unless I say otherwise, I knit all my socks on 2mm Chiago needles, the mini twists. I tried those for the first time last year, and I have just, they are my sock needle love. We are in a committed relationship, and they just make the whole sock knitting process so pleasant. I love them so much. So I have several pairs of them, 2mm Chiago mini twists, love them. I make all my socks on them. unless I say otherwise. So then, yeah, the final project I have to share with you is the lace pullover, and I shared this with you for the first time last week. The pattern is from this book here, so again, I am trying to use patterns that I already have, that I've acquired before this year, and this is the third pattern, I think, that I'm making from this book. I am finding this to be a very useful little book. So this is the design here. Again, it's called the lace pullover, and I've decided to make this for my friend's little girl. Every year for her birthday, I try and make her a new garment, and then last year I also ended up making her one for Christmas. So I may keep on doing that because it's fun. It's fun to knit for children who are smaller than Avery. The patterns go a lot faster. So that is what I'm making for her for this year, and it was also an opportunity to use some yarn that I had in my stash that I have absolutely no plans for. I mentioned this story last week, how I got this in a subscription box, and I had thought, it was my mistake, I looked up the wrong information. I thought it was going to be something different, but it ended up being just cream organic cotton, something I would never ever ever buy, but I think it's going to work really well for this pattern. When I showed it to you last week, I had just finished the ribbing. So I had done the provisional cast on, and I explained last week how I was doing a provisional cast on because I want to be able to add a contrast trim after the garment is done, or at least after the pieces are done. In the pattern there is a contrast written in there as well, but it is done as a crochet edging after, and I wanted it to be knit into it. So once I finish the pieces and once I pick out, I would like to get a nice little spring dress to go with this gift. Once I find the little dress and I can pull a color from that, I will rip this out and then knit a little edge down. So when I do a provisional cast on, my preferred method is to do the crochet. You just do a really, really long crochet chain, and then when you're picking up, you make sure you go through the bumps. So not the V's on the top, but the bumps, and then I find I have no problem ripping it out. I always do a little knot on one end, so I don't know if you can see there on my thumb, there's a knot. I knot the end that I end on because that's the end that you will be ripping from. So I always put a knot on the strand, and that way I know this is the end that I am going to pull to remove the provisional cast on. So I don't anticipate there being any problems with that, and I look forward to picking out a color to do that with. But yeah, so last week I had the provisional cast on done, and I had the ribbing up to about here. I had not started the pattern yet. So the other night I was able to, I had a little time in the evening to do some knitting, and I got out the chart and I started the lace pattern, and it is going pretty well. I like how it looks. I like that it's a fairly intuitive pattern. It is not one that I can memorize completely. I believe it is a 16-row pattern, but every time I do a row, I can look at the chart once and I know what I'm doing. I can knit through that row without having to look at the chart, and that is fine with me. The lace patterns that I don't like is where you can't get into a rhythm and you have to keep looking at the chart as you knit through the row. That I find really slows me down, and I just don't enjoy it as much. Whereas this one, once I get started on the row, it's very easy to get into that rhythm, and I can do the whole row, and then the second row is always just a knit the stitches as they appear, so I can go 2 rows without having to check the chart. And then I check the chart, I do the next 2 rows, check the chart. So this is going nice and smoothly. I think I only have about an inch or 2 left to knit for the length before I take off some of the stitches and then I knit up so to start doing where the sleeves would fit into. But yeah, this is fairly straightforward, and I did mention last week that because this was a pieced garment, if there would be any interest in me doing a little how I video on how I assemble pieced garments, how I do the seaming, how I set in the sleeves and stuff, and overwhelmingly the response was yes, please, that would be very helpful. So I am going to make, I'm definitely going to make the effort as soon as I finish all the pieces to this to record a little video of how I put this together, because basically the things that I would do to put this together would be the exact same as if I put together an adult garment or any kind of pieced garment, which is why I thought this might be a nice little project to show that with. So the only thing that I failed to mention last week is that I had to make a modification with the yarn. So this yarn is a sport weight yarn, and pattern calls for a worsted yarn, and this is a sport weight. So I am doing the largest size. I'm doing a 6-year size, but I am using needles that are appropriate for this yarn. So I'm using a 4mm needle, which is smaller than what the pattern asks for. And I'm hoping to just get something that falls in the range of, you know, a size 4, because she's around 4 years old. But yeah, and it's cotton, so it's pretty stretchy. I think it's gonna, I like that even without this being washed and blocked, the lace is still attractive. So I'm not as worried about once I give it to my friend and once it's being worn and once it's being washed, this yarn is machine washable and machine dryable, that the lace pattern is going to go all funky and it's not going to look as nice. So I always like when, even before something has been blocked, that it still looks nice. Like that doesn't look like, you know, how sometimes lace can look like crunched up, you know, a big crunched up mess before you kind of press it and block it. So I'm happy with that. I think this is going well. I'm still happy with this project. I do not anticipate ripping that out and starting something else, as has been my habit over the past couple of weeks. So I believe that is all the knitting, and so now I'm going to get into the chat portion of this episode, which, as I mentioned at the beginning, is going to be talking a little bit about some of the doodads and what sits behind me, and you know, why I have kept them. And again, this was requested by Shirley, who is a viewer, and I follow Shirley on Instagram, and I was not surprised that she was asking about my little stuffies, because she makes tons of little stuffies herself, and I wanted to take a moment before I get into talking about my little bits and bobs, about the charity that Shirley makes all her little critters for. So there is a charity called Cancer Kickin Critters, and I remember looking this up. Shirley, you mentioned this several episodes ago, that you do little stuffies for this charity, and I had looked it up, and it just seems like such a wonderful organization. It was started by a young girl who had a friend who was going through cancer treatments, and she wanted to do something for her, so she was, you know, making little critters to make her friend feel better, and they have basically made this into a bigger organization. And there's lots of ways that you can help, and I love how they have so many different options. So even if you're unable to actually make critters, there's other ways that you can help too. So one of it, I'm going to put the website right below me, and I will also link it in the description box below. But basically, there's 3 ways that you can help. You can actually make little critters and send them into them. You can make squares and send them in, just plain knit squares. We have another suggestion for making little owl bodies, because I believe one of the things they'll do is they'll put kits together so that some of the kids going through treatment can kind of make their own stuffies. So you can make pieces that then they will put into kits, or you can send in supplies, so like yarn, stuffing, needles, stuff like that. So there's lots of ways that you can help. I encourage you to go to the website and just check it out. I think it's wonderful. I was actually looking at this before and thinking it would be really fun to do something with Avery where we could make the little squares to send in, or the little owl bodies, because, you know, you just work them around. So I think that might be something that we put on our list for over the summer. But again, if you enjoy doing charity knitting, or you enjoy making stuffies, yeah, I would check it out. I'm gonna leave the link below to go to the website and just read everything. It's a it's amazing what kids can do. This was started by a young girl. So yes, go do that. So now getting into all my little critters. Basically, this shelf is in my studio, And it is just a place where I put all my little knickknacks and stuff. I don't like a lot of clutter in the house, but I do like having this one spot that I can put things that, you know, make me smile and may have memories attached to them, but they're all in one spot so that it's just, yeah, they're not all over the house. So a lot of the things that you can see behind me, if you have been watching, you will know when I've made them. So I'm going to start with those and just kind of point, and then I will talk more about some other things. So we all know the unicorn there. I made that last spring. I believe it was last spring. Christy from Relatively Crafty was having a stuffy along where you can make toys and enter them into her knit along. And so I made this unicorn, which was a mystery knit along from the designer Barbara Prime, and she has some wonderful stuffies. And that unicorn also, where is she? Oh, there she is. Along with the pattern came this little fairy. So that was a really fun pattern to make. And then the same with Princess Buttercup there. I made that as part of the cal as well to go along with these guys here that I received in a Princess Bride swap. So I'd had these guys for several years, and then when Christy was doing her cal, I thought it might be fun to make Princess Buttercup. So I made those last year. And then I also made this little guy here for that cal. It's the Dashing Dachshund pattern. I just love dachshunds. I think if their personality was suited to what we would be looking for in a dog and for our family, I would absolutely I would absolutely look into a dachshund. I think they are adorable, but I don't think they would fit into our family very well. So I just admire them from afar. Every time I see one, they just make me smile. So yeah, I made myself a little dachshund in his little colorwork sweater. So I made him last year. And then I believe all the other ones are ones that I've had prior or I did not make. So I grabbed this little guy here. He's usually sitting kind of beside Beaker there. Steph, I think you asked about Mr. Monkey here a while ago, and I thought this would be a good place to address it. So this little monkey was just from a dollar store sock monkey kit that I picked up not this past summer, but the summer before. It was an activity that Avery and I did together over the summer, and basically the kit, I think, had one or two, either had one sock or a pair of socks, and it gave you instructions on how to cut up the socks, how to sew it together, and how to make a monkey. And so we did that, and she picked out all the little accessories, and yeah, he just kind of sits on my shelf because again, this is the shelf for things that make me smile, and he makes me smile. And then to talk about his little bow tie there, I know it's a little large for him, but again, this is something else that just makes me smile. You can see this picture right here. That was me on my university graduation. And those are my grandparents. And my papa was, his signature style was wearing a bow tie. He wore them all the time. And when he passed, he had his collection of bow ties. I believe my aunt has several of them. But this is one of them, and this was my favorite one because there's actually a battery attachment to it. Yes, he wore a bow tie with a battery that lit up. And yeah, this had flashing lights, and it would light up, and this is the one that I remembered the most. So this is the one that I grabbed, and he just lives happily on Mr. Monkey on my shelf. This is another little guy who's usually on my shelf. He's usually right there beside the olives. I did mention in my the episode last fall around our anniversary, that's one of the things that I've made for my husband over the years, is a jar of little olives that says "all of you" because I'm corny, and yeah, they stay on my shelf because again, they make me smile. And so he's usually right beside there. So I did not make this. This is a bulldog, and this is something else I received in a Ravelry swap. And the theme of that swap was Looney Tunes, and I had put down that one of my favorite kind of sketches from Looney Tunes was, you know, the big bulldog with the cat and how the little kitten crawls on the back of the bulldog and kind of, you know, kneads into his back, and he's like, ooh, ow, ooh, 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 but then he curls up and he's all cute. That's one of my favorite little sketches. So my partner made me this bulldog, and I don't know if she followed a pattern or if she just kind of wung it, but yeah, I like him, and he just lives on my shelf there as well. And then that clock there, I was informed last week when I saw my mom, because she sees it. I just had it because, back to my papa, he also collected bells, and I inherited his collection of bells. They're in another room, like, you know, like ding, 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 ding bells. He had them from all over the place. And in that box was this alarm clock, and apparently it used to belong to my mom when she was little. It was the alarm clock that she had in her room, so I just have it there. I kind of like that. And then what else do we have? Oh, I see another little guy. So this little guy is usually sitting on that box right there, and I did make this several years ago. It is from a pattern on Ravelry. It's something to do with minions. I'll put the name of the pattern right on the screen here, but I made him a whole many years ago. I don't remember why. I think I made one for my friend as well, but then in a swap that I did, I used to do a lot of swaps. Someone sent me a card that had this little kind of miniature knitting on it, and so I took it off of the card, and I thought it was the perfect size to give to this little guy. So he sits up there on the box with his little knitting amongst all the yarn. And then I think there's only one or two other things that I see. This little llama guy I picked up at a fiber show one year. I was trying not to buy yarn that I didn't need, and so this was from handmade from a vendor, and I thought, oh, that's cute. And I'm glad I have him, because it's something that I can have for a long time. Even, with yarn, you make things, you give them away. This guy I will have for a long time. Actually, behind him, you can kind of see that box there. That's something else I got in a swap. Just a minute, I'm going to get that. Okay, so I got the box. So this is something else I got in a swap many years ago, and my partner painted this for me. This was our cat before Mr. T. His name was Mo. He was a big boy. He was a very loud boy. But yeah, he was my little fur baby before. He did move into the house with us, and then he passed when he was like, I don't know, something ridiculous, like 22 years old or something. We got him when he was 13 at a shelter. We were like, okay, we'll give him a good last 2 years or so, and then he lived for like another 13 years. Maybe he was 26 when he died, I don't know. But anyway, so this is Mo, so I like to keep this because it's just a reminder, an everyday reminder of him, and it's on a little box with a clasp. I used to keep my stitch markers in here. It's a nice little box like that, but now my stitch markers are on a board that I hang above my desk, so I just like to keep that little box there just to look at. And then the only other thing I think is this little guy here, this little bear with his balloons. I made that, again, my mom made the comment on that, and she let me know when we made that. It's one of those stained glass things where you put in the oven. But it was way back when it was like real glass, and that's like real glass and real metal. And she said that I was 4 years old when we made that, and it has traveled with me very many places, and I think that's just a really nice spot for it, again, that I can just see all the time. The beaker bag, I got that in a swap. It was a Jim Henson swap, and I said beaker was my absolute favorite, so my partner made that for me. So yeah, there's just, there's lots of things. That little sheep was from Lewis Craft when I worked there. Lots of things that I get to look at. Oh, one more. The little fuzzy llama there, when Dennis went to South America about 2 years ago, he brought that back. So, yeah, just a shelf. It's a shelf full of happiness. That's basically what it is. So thank you, Shirley, for asking about the little bits and pieces behind me there. I hope you guys enjoyed that, and I think that's all I have for this episode. I hope you enjoyed this episode. I hope you have a very crafty weekend ahead of you and get lots of things done. And I will talk to you soon.